everybody. Thank you for coming and celebrating God and His Word this morning. You may have a seat, please. Okay. So I recognize that we've been studying and reading Genesis for quite some time now. However, I love when we reread a section of Scripture that I've read so many times before, and God shows me something new, as if it just pops off the page. I realized maybe before also that maybe I just needed to be reminded of it, or maybe something that I forgot. This is exactly the case this morning. Here in Genesis, so many times we have seen how we are created to worship and glorify God. Yet this morning, we are also reminded that we were created to be something else. That at times, I forget. And if we're all being honest, we all forget as well. So let's take a look at Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and He separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters to separate the water from the water." So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so. And God called the expanse sky. There was evening, there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land. And He gathered the waters, and He called it seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, trees, and the land that bear fruit, and seed in it, and according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years. And let them be lights in the expanse of the sky and give light on the earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth, and to govern the day and the night, and separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, there was morning, the fourth day. Then God said, "Let the waters teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea, every living thing and moving thing with which the water teems according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in numbers, and fill the waters in the sea, and let the birds increase on the earth." There was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, wild animals according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish in the sea, the birds of the air, over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male, female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds of the air and every living creature that moves on the ground. God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, every tree that was fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has breath and life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. There was evening, there was morning, the sixth day. As I said earlier, so many times we have seen how we are created to worship and glorify God. Yet this morning, I was reminded we are created to be something else sometimes. And I forget. And if we're all being honest, we forget as well. Did you notice something that was so painfully obvious in this passage? Did you notice how God created everything we would need before he created us? Right down to the air that we breathe. He created everything that we needed. Everything that we needed to depend on him for before he created us. I was reminded that we are created to be dependent on God for everything. Yet at times, I act in ways that I think I'm dependent upon myself or on other things or other people. Maybe this happens with you as well. So as I was processing this reminder in Genesis, I kept thinking that Jesus said to his disciples in John 14, in my Father's house, there'll be many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you myself. Friends, he prepared everything we needed before we were created, and he's preparing a room and a mansion for us for when we go back to him in heaven. He is preparing everything for those who follow him for when he comes back. And when we are dependent on God, we are dependent on God for our salvation because we cannot save ourselves, can we? Right? There's only one way, and that was the way through Jesus and his sacrifice for us. So yesterday, it was Independence Day, a day of national celebration. And we remember that as a country, the day that we became an independent nation, independent from another country, a day when families and friends celebrate, to eat together, laugh, and have fun, to watch parades, parties, and fireworks, to remember family members of military who sacrificed for us over the years. And as we sit in this room, I'm reminded the cost that was paid by them and the cost that families had to pay. The cost to secure our independence, the cost to maintain our independence and freedom. Independence Day, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And I kind of read that document recently. And we are declared independent, yet in no small way, that independence that was declared for us was derived by a sense of dependence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, friends, I'm not going to recite some speech from George Washington or Alexander Hamilton here. But in reading that statement, I got reminded by no small means, and we can only speculate, we were a nation that had some type of dependence on God. But we can only speculate what that dependence was. But it gave me pause. That as we celebrate Independence Day this year, so with that being said, I titled today's message, Dependence Day. A declaration that we are to be dependent and remain dependent on God for everything. You know, at the time that Ray solicited coverage for this talk today, he had asked me, and this was back in May, I was experiencing back issues and spent most of that week off of work. So that's when I wrote this. But I had to ask myself, do I remain dependent on God? So here we are, a message about Dependence Day. So throughout the scripture, the Bible lays out story after story of examples of our dependence on God. That we as humans, his creation, have our limits, and that God is God, and we are not. Humanity's existence is a direct result of God's creative act, setting up a life of designed reliance on God's provision. Even before the fall of Adam and Eve, they depended on God to provide for them in the garden. So starting in Genesis, if you recall, chapter 1 and 2 describes that while we are his creation, and that we may have dominion over the earth, and our freedom is structured and limited in such a way that necessitates our obedience to his boundaries. So we're going to give a little helicopter perspective as we look at the book of Genesis and other books throughout the Old Testament that show our true stability rests in God and results from acknowledging our dependence on him rather than relying on our wisdom and our own power. How many times do we get this wrong? It's like we have to remember and be reminded constantly to surrender ourselves to him daily. Me, sometimes I got to remember minute by minute. After Genesis 1 and 2 and all the way through Genesis 11, in simplistic terms, the rest of the Bible describes that interaction God has with us and us with him. And these interactions reveal what God is saying about himself, saying about us, and what God requires. Dependence on God is essential, yet as humans, we try to rely on ourselves or the wrong people. So here are some stories about the dependence that we have on God. All righty. Whoa. All right, let's start all over again from the beginning of this guy. Well, what is a talk at 316 without some type of technical difficulty, either caused by someone? Oh my gosh, here we go again. All right, what do you think there? No signal? All right. Well, while that's going on, I'll go ahead and start with the first verse. Dependence on God. Here's an example that we just read out of Genesis, and I'll read 27 through 31 out of chapter 1. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in your number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule it over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over the living creatures that move on the ground." And God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit and seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, and everything that has breath and life in it. I give you every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw that he had made it, and it was very good. And there was evening, morning, and then on the sixth day, this was. Again, he provided everything that we needed before he created us.
Jeremy, I think he accidentally, oh, there you go. That's mine. I think he accidentally changed his screen share when he dropped the mouse.
Yeah, something's going on here.
There you go.
Okay.
It went click crazy.
Okay. Next story is Noah and the flood in Genesis 6. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on the earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all the people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark, cypress, wood, make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. The Lord said to Noah, go in the ark, and you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, male and its mate, one pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I've made. And Noah did what the Lord had commanded. So in this story, Noah relies on God, his specific instructions for survival during the flood, demonstrating faith in God's promise and protection. Next story. Here in Exodus 14, Moses answered the people, do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You will need only to be still. Then the Lord says to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites will go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, and when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots and his horsemen. Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from the front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cold brought darkness to the one side and light to the other side, so neither went near or the other all night long. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all the night the Lord drove the sea back and a strong wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided. The Israelites went through the sea on the dry ground with a wall of water on the right and on their left. These are stories that we're familiar with, right? But here, Israel, the Exodus and the Red Sea, Israel is entirely dependent on God for rescue from the Egyptian army and for survival, emphasizing the deliverance comes from God. There is always something to be learned about the stories of dependence on God, because we can be dependent on what he's done in the past. We can be dependent on what he's doing in our lives right now. And we can be dependent on him for what he's promising us in the future. Next story. Maybe. No. There we go. In Daniel. So these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever." The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed. So King Darius put the decree in writing. And now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows open toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. And these men went up as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king, spoke to him about his royal decree. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, your majesty would be thrown into the lion's den? The king answered, "The decree stands in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed." Then they said to the king, Daniel, "Who is the one of the exiles from Judah pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree that you put in writing? He still prays 3 times a day." And when the king heard this, he was greatly distressed, and he was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. These men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed." So the king gave orders, and they brought Daniel and threw him in the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of the nobles, so that Daniel's situation may not be changed. So do we remember what happened with Daniel? Do we? He survived, right? So Daniel demonstrates unwavering faith in God's protection while facing death, highlighting reliance on God's sovereignty and his earthly powers. Then we've got the story of David and Goliath, which we're familiar with as well. Here, David relies on God's power rather than the armor of weapons, setting an example of trusting God's strength over self-sufficiency. Now we've got the story of Esther. I'll read this one because some people are not as familiar with this one. So Hatak, if I even said that properly, went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show Esther and explain to her. And he told her to instruct her to go out into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, "All the king's official and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king extends a gold scepter to them and spares their lives. The 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king." And when Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back the answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house you are alone. Of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent, relief and deliverance for these Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And you know but that what you have come to the royal position for such a time as this. Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go gather all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat, drink for 3 days, nights and day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. Do this and I will go to the king, even though it's against the law. If I perish, I will perish. Dependence on God. Esther puts her life at risk, trusting God's providence to save her people, showcasing courage born out of total reliance. Now we have the Gideons, and then I have one more story for you after this. Here, God reduces the Gideon's army to 300 men to ensure victory over the Medians. This is done in 2 stages. First, sending home the fearful, and second, by water lapping. This ensures the Israelites will rely on God for victory rather than their own numbers. And the last example we'll see for this morning is Elijah at Mount Carmel. This is where Elijah depends on God to intervene as he sends fire and proves his own power over Baal. These are just some of the examples that we have of people being dependent upon God, trusting in God. But what I want to get to the main point now is, again, we remember what was done in the past, that God's dependable in our present, that God's dependable for our future. But these examples about dependence, they're very good examples, but we need to understand one thing. What is dependence on God? Glad you asked. All righty. Okay. Dependence on God. You need to surrender your will for God's will. Dependence means yielding one's own desires for God's will. This was modeled by Jesus. All right. Why is it not working? Okay. Here's an example. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. And on reaching that place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall in temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, as his sweat was like drops of blood falling on the ground. Dependence on God is faith over self-reliance. It involves moving from a cocoon of false security and self-effort to a faith that rests in God's grace, even in trials. This is hard. How many times we want to trust in God, we want to depend on him, especially when we're going through challenging times, and then we take it back, right? We get lost in worry, or we get lost in the what ifs, or we try and fix it ourselves. This is a voluntary reliance that glorifies God and is essential for living a fruitful, godly life. So what is dependence on God? Daily provision and trust. Jesus teaches how to in Matthew 6. This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Staying connected to Jesus. I'm the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. But if you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be disciples. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean on not your own understanding, and in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. It's all has to do with depending on God. So there we go. Dependence on God, what it could look like. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, go to the restroom, and we got some questions and we can have a discussion. Okay? Thank you.